Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what is happening in Kabul right now demands directness. Everyone is focused on the humanitarian crisis. Everyone is asking whether the withdrawal was handled properly. But that is not the real story. What we are witnessing is not a power vacuum. It is not a failed state collapsing into chaos. What we are witnessing is the most consequential geopolitical realignment in Central Asia in 4 decades, and it is happening at a speed that has stunned American intelligence analysts. I am looking at a document that has been circulating among regional security experts for the past 72 hours. It is not a military assessment. It is not a terrorism threat briefing. It is not a humanitarian report. It is a memorandum of understanding between the Taliban government and the Chinese Communist Party outlining a comprehensive economic and security partnership. And what it contains is not what anyone in Washington expected. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why Afghanistan just became China's Western gateway, why Pakistan is facilitating this alliance with extraordinary precision, and why your energy costs and rare earth mineral prices are about to be affected by decisions being made in Kabul right now. This is analysis you will not find in mainstream Western media because they are still covering the story that ended 3 weeks ago. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively analyzed by Chinese, Pakistani, and Russian strategic planners as we speak. Let's start with geography, because geography explains everything that is about to unfold. Afghanistan sits at the crossroads of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. It shares a 76-kilometer border with China through the Wakhan corridor. That border matters. To the south, it shares a 2,500-kilometer border with Pakistan. To the north, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. To the west, Iran. Every single one of these neighbors has spent the last 3 weeks engaging with the Taliban government while Western nations debate recognition. Afghanistan is estimated to hold over $1 trillion in untapped mineral resources: lithium, copper, rare earth elements, gold, and iron ore. The United States Geological Survey documented these reserves in detail. Rare earth elements are critical for electric vehicle batteries, solar panels, wind turbines, and advanced electronics. Currently, China controls over 70% of global rare earth processing. Afghanistan's reserves could theoretically diversify that supply chain. But here's what matters right now. China is not waiting for theoretical possibilities. They are moving on actual agreements. According to reporting by the South China Morning Post and confirmed by Pakistani diplomatic sources, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Taliban representatives in Doha on August 28th. That meeting was not symbolic. It was transactional. Within 72 hours of that meeting, Chinese state-owned enterprises began preliminary surveys of the Mez Aynak copper mine, 30 kilometers southeast of Kabul. This is the second largest copper deposit in the world. China had secured rights to this mine in 2007 under the previous government, but security concerns halted development. Those security concerns are now being addressed through a very specific arrangement. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now, let us talk about what China and Pakistan actually built while everyone else was watching Kabul airport. Announcement number 1, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor extension into Afghanistan. And this one matters more than anything else because it transforms Afghanistan from an isolated conflict zone into an integrated node in the Belt and Road Initiative. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, known as CPEC, is a $62 billion infrastructure project connecting China's Xinjiang region to Pakistan's Gwadar port on the Arabian Sea. It includes highways, railways, fiber optic cables, and energy pipelines. For the past 8 years, Afghanistan has been conspicuously absent from this network. That absence was strategic. The previous government in Kabul was allied with the United States, including Afghanistan in CPEC, while American forces occupied the country was diplomatically impossible. But here is what changed in the last 21 days. On September 4th, Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan publicly stated that Afghanistan has a right to freedom and independence, and that Pakistan would work with the new government to ensure regional stability. That statement was coordinated with Beijing. How do we know? Because 48 hours earlier, Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi held a phone call with Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. They discussed the exact framework for integrating Afghanistan into regional connectivity projects. The proposed extension would link Kabul to Peshawar through the Torkham border crossing. From Peshawar, it connects to the existing CPEC infrastructure running through Islamabad, Lahore, and down to Gwadar. Total distance, approximately 1,600 kilometers. Estimated construction cost, $12 to $15 billion over 5 years. China has already signaled willingness to finance this through concessional loans and infrastructure investment. The economic rationale is straightforward. Afghanistan provides access to Central Asian markets and reduces China's dependence on the Malacca Strait for energy imports from the Middle East. According to Reuters and multiple regional officials, the Taliban government has indicated openness to this project in exchange for 3 things: economic development funding, international legitimacy, and security guarantees. China is prepared to offer all 3, but with conditions. And those conditions reveal the entire strategy. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the security arrangement that makes this economically viable. This is the part that Western intelligence agencies are tracking most closely. China's primary concern in Afghanistan is not humanitarian. It is not ideological. It is operational. The East Turkestan Islamic Movement, also known as ETIM, operates in Afghanistan and has historically launched attacks in China's Xinjiang region. Chinese authorities consider ETIM a terrorist organization. Preventing ETIM from using Afghan territory as a base is non-negotiable for Beijing. In the August 28th meeting in Doha, the Taliban made a commitment. According to the Global Times and confirmed by Pakistani intelligence sources, Taliban leadership pledged that Afghan soil would not be used to threaten China's security. This was not a vague diplomatic statement. It was a specific operational commitment backed by enforcement mechanisms. What enforcement mechanisms? Here is where it gets extremely interesting. Pakistan's Inter Services Intelligence, the ISI, has maintained relationships with Taliban leadership for decades. This is not speculation. This is documented fact. The ISI is now functioning as the intermediary and guarantor for China's security concerns. Pakistani intelligence officers are reportedly advising Taliban security forces on counterterrorism operations specifically targeting ETM cells in eastern Afghanistan. This is not a NATO-style military occupation. This is an intelligence sharing and training relationship that operates below international visibility thresholds. Stay with me because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implications for regional security become impossible to ignore. The Chinese are also deploying their own security presence, but not through uniformed military forces. Chinese private security companies, many staffed by former People's Liberation Army personnel, are being contracted to protect belt and road projects in Afghanistan. These companies operate under corporate licenses, not military command structures. This gives China plausible deniability while maintaining operational control over security around critical infrastructure. The model was tested in Pakistan and is now being replicated in Afghanistan. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States withdrew from Afghanistan, the assumption in Washington was that Afghanistan would collapse into civil war or become a terrorist haven. Instead, what is emerging is a managed transition where China and Pakistan are providing economic incentives and security architecture in exchange for strategic access. That is not chaos, that is statecraft. Now to start, received. That is announcement number 2. Announcement number 3, and this one, almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The energy corridor that bypasses American-controlled choke points. Turkmenistan holds the world's 4th largest natural gas reserves. For decades, Turkmenistan has sought to export this gas to South Asian markets, particularly Pakistan and India. The proposed Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, known as TAPI, has been discussed since the 1990s. Security concerns in Afghanistan repeatedly stalled the project. Every previous attempt collapsed because the central Afghan government could not guarantee pipeline security across Taliban-controlled territory. But here is what has shifted in the last 3 weeks. On September 7th, Turkmen Foreign Minister Rashid Meredov met with Taliban representatives in Ashgabat. The topic was energy cooperation. According to Turkmen state media, the Taliban pledged to provide security guarantees for the TAPI pipeline route through Afghanistan. This is the same government that spent 20 years blowing up infrastructure. Now they are guaranteeing its protection. Why the change? The answer is simple. The Taliban government needs revenue. Pipeline transit fees could generate hundreds of millions of dollars annually. But more importantly, China is backing this project. Chinese state energy companies are in negotiations to purchase Turkmen gas and finance pipeline construction. This transforms TAPI from a regional energy project into a component of China's Belt and Road Initiative. The route matters geopolitically. TAPI bypasses Iran, bypasses Russia, and bypasses the Strait of Hormuz entirely. It provides an overland energy route from Central Asia to the Indian Ocean that is not vulnerable to American naval interdiction. For China, this is strategic diversification. For Pakistan, it is desperately needed energy security. Pakistan faces chronic energy shortages. TAPI could provide 13 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually. That is enough to power Pakistan's industrial sector and reduce dependence on liquefied natural gas imports. If you operate a business that depends on stable energy prices, if you manufacture products using rare earth elements, if you rely on supply chains connected to South Asia, what is happening in Kabul is not a foreign policy story. It is a cost structure story, and it is unfolding right now. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let us talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The first story is the one you have been seeing. Humanitarian concerns, refugee flows, Taliban human rights record, women's education, evacuation efforts. These are real issues. They are morally significant. They deserve attention. But they are not the geopolitical story. The geopolitical story is about which nations are gaining influence, which economic corridors are being constructed, and which alliances are being formalized while Western governments debate recognition. China recognized the new Afghan government within days, not formally, but operationally. Chinese diplomats are meeting Taliban officials. Chinese companies are conducting mineral surveys. Chinese security firms are deploying to project sites. Russia has kept its embassy in Kabul open throughout the transition. Pakistan is facilitating every aspect of this realignment. Iran is engaged diplomatically. These nations are not waiting for consensus at the United Nations. They are establishing facts on the ground. Meanwhile, the United States and European nations are paralyzed by recognition debates. Should we legitimize the Taliban? What about human rights conditions? What about women's rights? These are important questions. But while those debates continue, China, Russia, and Pakistan are writing the rules for the next chapter of Afghan governance. They are providing the economic lifelines, the security frameworks, and the diplomatic recognition that the new government needs to consolidate power. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States spent 20 years and over $2 trillion trying to build a pro-Western government in Afghanistan, the goal was to create a stable ally that could block Chinese and Russian influence in Central Asia. That project failed. And the failure was not just military. It was strategic, because the moment American forces withdrew, the nations that spent 2 decades waiting on the sidelines moved in with a coordinated plan. President Biden stated that the mission in Afghanistan was never about nation building. But China is doing exactly that. They are building infrastructure. They are financing development. They are integrating Afghanistan into regional economic systems. And they are doing it without deploying 100,000 troops. They are doing it with capital, connectivity, and security partnerships. The European Union has conditioned future aid on human rights improvements. That is a principled position. It is also strategically irrelevant, because while the EU debates conditions, China is writing unconditional checks. And in geopolitics, the nation that provides resources without conditions tends to gain influence over the nation that provides conditions without resources. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. The Peloponnesian War. Athens and Sparta went to war. 27 years of conflict. Both sides were exhausted, their treasuries depleted, their populations decimated. And who won? Persia. Persia did not fight in the war. Persia funded both sides strategically, waited for mutual exhaustion, and then dictated terms. The parallel is exact. The United States is Athens, spent 2 decades fighting in Afghanistan, over $2 trillion expended, thousands of American lives lost, tens of thousands wounded. The Taliban is Sparta, fought asymmetrically for 20 years, absorbed enormous casualties, never surrendered. And China is Persia, waited patiently, avoided direct confrontation. And now, in the aftermath of mutual exhaustion, China is structuring the peace on terms favorable to Chinese interests. The lesson is this: prolonged conflict between two powers creates opportunities for a third power that remains patient and resource-rich. The United States and the Taliban destroyed each other's preferred outcomes. Neither side got what they wanted, but China is getting exactly what they wanted: access to Central Asian energy, rare earth minerals, and a Western logistics corridor that bypasses American naval dominance. So, where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths, because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1, Afghanistan stabilizes under Taliban governance with Chinese and Pakistani support. Economic development begins. Infrastructure projects move forward. Tapi pipeline construction starts within 2 years. Rare earth mining operations commence. Afghanistan integrates into Belt and Road Initiative. Regional powers coordinate through Shanghai Cooperation Organization framework. The United States and Europe remain diplomatically isolated from this process, watching from the sidelines as China cements influence in Central Asia. This path requires Taliban governance to maintain internal security and prevent terrorist groups from operating in Afghan territory. If they can deliver on that commitment, this is the most likely scenario. Path 2, Afghanistan fragments into renewed civil war. Northern Alliance forces, ethnic militarities, and ISIS-K launch insurgencies against Taliban rule. Taliban government cannot maintain control. Chinese infrastructure projects stall due to security concerns. Pakistan's ISI increases direct involvement to prevent total collapse. Russia intervenes in northern provinces to protect Tajik and Uzbek populations. Afghanistan becomes a proxy battleground for regional powers. This scenario becomes more likely if the Taliban government alienates ethnic minorities or fails to suppress ISIS-K effectively. Early indicators to watch are violence levels in Panjshir Valley and Hazara majority regions. Path 3, and this is the one almost nobody is discussing, Afghanistan becomes the testing ground for an alternative development model. China demonstrates that infrastructure investment and economic integration can stabilize a post-conflict state faster than Western democracy promotion and military occupation. This model then gets replicated in other fragile states. Chinese influence expands globally, not through military force, but through economic statecraft. American influence contracts correspondingly. This is not a 2-year scenario. This is a 20-year scenario. But the decisions being made in Kabul right now are setting the conditions for this future. I think we are closer to path 1 than the headlines suggest. The Taliban have strong incentives to maintain security and deliver on commitments to China and Pakistan. Chinese economic leverage is substantial. Pakistan's intelligence and military support provide enforcement mechanisms. Regional powers have coordinated their approach. The biggest variable is whether the Taliban government can suppress internal dissent and prevent ISIS-K from launching destabilizing attacks. If they can manage that, Afghanistan in 5 years will look very different than Afghanistan today. But here is what I am watching. Watch Chinese state-owned enterprise activity. If mining operations and infrastructure surveys continue without major security incidents, that signals confidence. Watch Pakistani troop deployments along the Durand Line. Increased deployments suggest concerns about spillover instability. Watch energy negotiations. If TAPI moves from discussion to signed contracts, that confirms the economic integration model is working. Watch Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan diplomatic engagement. Their willingness to work with the Taliban government is the leading indicator of regional acceptance. Here are the questions I want you to take away. Can the Taliban transition from insurgent movement to governing authority capable of delivering security guarantees to foreign investors? Can China replicate its Belt and Road model in a post-conflict state with no functioning institutions? Can Pakistan manage the strategic balancing act of supporting the Taliban while maintaining relations with the United States? Tell me in the comments what you think is the most underreported aspect of this realignment. Tell me if you think path 1, path 2, or path 3 is most likely. We will keep tracking every development in Kabul, Islamabad, and Beijing. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand what just happened in Afghanistan. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, and we will see you in the next analysis.